Bennett, this next one's for you because I know that you've always had expressed concerns about the recreational uses and about industry. And I know I was on the river the other day. Of course, we have the Architecture River Cruise, so we're active there. But I was watching a cruise boat go by with a barge with a kayak. And I thought, boy, that's an interesting combination. People kayaking in the main branch of the Chicago River still amaze me. You have some concerns, I know, about, what point do we kind of recreationize our river to the point that industry can't survive? And, what's the right balance with these uses? How do we continue to promote a strong economic growth with a working river, but also understanding people now want to get down to the water?
Yes, excellent question, Lynn. So a couple of things. I think one, and this is also thinking about back to the Detroit panel, do you know in the audience, is Detroit gaining population or losing population? I'm talking about the city itself. Because from that presentation, you might believe that Detroit is now gaining population, which is simply not true. The city is down about 300-some thousand from its population in 1990. I'm talking about the city itself. Oftentimes in these discussions, the region and the city are conflated and gives you a false sense about revitalization and where it occurs. Similarly, Chicago is 1 million people off its all-time population high. So as a basic issue, I would generally say within Cook County and the region as a whole, we should really not be creating new areas for residential development when we have enormous amounts of vacant land, particularly in the south and western parts of our region, not just the city itself, begging for new development. So why are we creating new residential developments in the most sort of overstuffed areas of the city already, particularly the north side and the northwest sides of Chicago and beyond, so essentially you're kicking out industrial uses, you're making it harder for operations like Ozinga and Prairie Materials in particular to operate. And let us keep in mind right now, with both Ozinga and Prairie Materials, and you can use Google to confirm this statement, they both have facilities north of downtown, and they both have facilities south of downtown on the river. And I would assume, just as Ozinga has saved you from having 90,000 trucks on the road because they deliver their aggregate via barge to their facilities, I assume for Prairie Materials the number is probably comparable. So 180,000 trucks. So let's just say we displace Ozinga and Prairie Materials from their current North Branch locations. And the idea, we'll just move them south. Well, why? They already have facilities to the south, and there's a clear thing about where they're located and why, and also concrete needs to move quickly to its ultimate destination. So if you're going to put all the locations south and make them drive north to where the construction site is, you're going to have a problem with construction quality, and you guys like to build things, don't you?
Great. Well, thank you to our panel, and we have time for a few questions. Lisa.
I'm going to give a rebuttal from Detroit. So I don't know if you went to Detroit during the dark days. I was appalled. Basically, in core downtown Detroit, only 4% of the traffic lights, like light lights, worked. The fire system didn't work. The water system worked. It was Armageddon. And I went to a place which, the Packard factory, and there were mountains. I'm talking mountains of garbage with rats the size of my dog running around. And I know there's mixed opinions about Dan Gilbert and what's happened, but you go to Detroit now, it's turned a corner. As we said on Wall Street, he put a put into the market. Has he gotten financial gain? Yes. But the city of Detroit has gotten gain too, and there was a mass exodus, and it's starting to come back. So if you talk to and I heard what you're saying about exodus, why people left from the 90s, it was really dangerous. You couldn't stop at a traffic light or you get killed. So I think, in defense of Detroit, I don't think it's a perfect story, but the transformation, I've gone there like every 6 months, it's really impressive. There's companies, there's factories, there's art, there's activity, and it's much better than it was in the dark days. So go Detroit.
Well, And let me just say, Chicago in the mid 80s was no picnic either in the downtown. For those of us who remember it, it was, one could say very similar things. And I would say that is a very consistent pattern for all Rust Belt cities, be it Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee, Kansas City, St. Louis. All of them have new gleamy downtowns. That work they're doing around the St. Louis Arch, it's incredible. And I applaud the revitalization of all these cities, but I think one of the challenges becomes, to some extent, it's a facade that still doesn't deal with an underlying problem, which is that, if you're right-sizing for the number of jobs relative to population, both Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland have actually more population to lose before they stabilize.